Like a wind you don't feel on your skin, you can't see it in the sky. If I tell you something, baby, do you promise not to cry? At first it came with some awful news, but news that was needed. The children seemed to understand before I could believe it.
Jesse Ruddock is a talented writer, photographer, and musician currently based in Brooklyn, New York. Originally from Guelph, Ontario, Ruddock graduated from Harvard cum laude after attending the university on an ice hockey scholarship. She was a hotshot goalie who got into hip-hop and underground rock thanks to Jim Guthrie and pals like Noah 23 and Livestock. She's made her own music under monikers like Coco Bonaparte and Coco Blue, and her writing and photography has appeared in The New Yorker, Bomb Magazine, and Vice. In February 2017, Coach House Books published her debut novel. It's called Shot Blue and has received raves from The New York Times, Publishers Weekly, and Kirkus Reviews, among others. Jessie and I caught up at the CFRU studios recently when she was home in Guelph, and she surprised me with stories about her past life as a hockey goalie, attending Harvard, her writing influences, the power of her peers in Guelph, her remarkably talented family, and where her novel, Shot Blue, may have come from. Sponsored by Pizza Trocadero, The Bookshelf, and Planet Bean Coffee, this is Jesse Ruddock in conversation on the 316th episode of Creative Control with your host, me, Vish Khanna. Hi, Jesse. How's it going?
Hi, Vish. I'm doing great, and thanks for having me.
Of course. It's nice to have you here. We're at the CFRU studios, and I don't know if you are very familiar with this place. Did you come up here a lot when you lived in Guelph?
Yeah, mostly when I was a young teenager. So I was in the punk scene, and I came to a lot of shows in the basement of this building, and then would come and hang out up here when people had all kinds of shows. And but I never had one of my own, but I loitered here a lot.
Why did you not want to have your own show?
I was too busy playing hockey.
Oh, right. You played hockey?
Yeah.
As a kid, is that something you did a lot of?
Yeah.
Oh.
Wait, do you not know that?
I vaguely know it. I mean, I know that you did an interview with someone else here, and you talked about you were a goalie?
I was a goalie, yeah.
But I didn't know how serious that was, because the person you're talking to, I actually don't know her seriousness either. I got the impression it was like rec hockey, I just play.
No.
You were a serious hockey player?
Yeah, it was my whole life in my first career until I was about 23. So my dad, who doesn't obey categories at all, signed me up for boys hockey because there wasn't a girls league at that time in Guelph.
Right.
And then I was the only girl in paperweight league.
Paperweight?
Yeah, that's like when you're 4 or 5.
Oh.
And then I won the MVP that year because there was a shootout, and I poke checked everyone coming down in the shootout. And then
at 5 years old,
yeah.
You had that killer instinct.
Yes.
Amazing. That's great.
Well, I used to go to all the Platers games. That was the name of the Storm.
The Storm. Why were they called the Platers, by the way?
I think that's like an industry. I don't know what plating is, but it's some sort of metal job.
And that's a thing that happened a lot in Guelph?
I think it must have, but I don't really know.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, that started. Then I played single A and then triple A boys, and I played high school boys for GC, which was some of my favorite hockey. Did you go to GC?
No, I didn't live in Guelph.
Okay.
I grew up in Cambridge. I moved here for university.
All right.
So I'm not a Guelph person. Did you think I was a Guelph person?
Yes, I imagine that halo around your head.
I would come here for shows every once in a while as a teenager, so I was familiar with it. But then I applied. You apply to a bunch of universities when you're in high school or whatever, and then I didn't have any romantic notion coming here. Although I will say, that can't be entirely true. I had some very pivotal musical moments, like a house show that with a band from Discord Records, Blue Tip played, and I also I saw Sloan for the first time in Guelph, which was a big deal for me. So I shouldn't say that it wasn't romantic on some level. Guelph did mean something to me, but actually one of the first out of town shows I played when I was in a band was in Guelph at the Albion. So I guess it was bound to happen. We were meant to be, the city and I. But anyway, sorry, you played hockey seriously.
Yeah, I played AAA boys, which is very tough and great, and it was tons of fun, which meant I was recruited by U.S. college teams, women's teams.
Yeah.
And when I was 15, I got a bunch of letters, which was sort of early, from all the colleges saying, please play for us. Like
on the men's teams? Women's
those
teams.
Were women.
They had women's teams.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Their scouts love to find, girls playing on boys' teams. And so then I went a couple years later on college visits. And then I went to Harvard. I chose that team because they had a lot of great Canadian hockey players on their team.
Right.
And I played goal for them for 3 years. And
so you went to Harvard and played hockey.
Yeah.
That's an amazing thing. And you went to classes.
I only cared about hockey.
You went to classes and stuff? You were a student at Harvard?
I was a student.
At Harvard.
Yeah.
That is, and you're like, you didn't know this? I should know. I did vaguely know about these things, but I've never, it's like a rumor. Mm-hmm. You hear these things like that Jesse Ruddock went to Harvard, and you're like, that can't be true.
It was.
What is she in Goodwill Hunting? Like, that's what I wondered. But no, you played for. What was that like What was it like going to school in Harvard?
Yeah.
First of all, because it's like a mythical thing. Harvard, right. Yale, these Ivy League American schools.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I should say that my Guelph punk friends had an intervention before I went because they didn't believe in higher education in the systematic kind. Mm-hmm. And so I went out to dinner with a bunch of them, and they all tried to convince me not to go, which I love them for so much. And I feel like Guelph kept me really true throughout all of that because going to Harvard was totally disorienting because all the kids came from different backgrounds and were really trained to be there, whereas I was trained to stop pucks and also just loved my life and my family, but there's a lot of ambition there that was totally foreign to me.
Right.
And that I didn't thrive in at first. And I learned how to roll, and I made some friends who, you need friends to protect you in an environment like that where people are so competitive. But it took some time. And I was thinking about this not long ago, but going to school in Guelph didn't prepare me for the school there, so I tested very low. They put you through standardized testing at Harvard. Oh. And I arrived as like a top student, but I was like at the bottom of the barrel and had to climb my way back up. So it was very tough. And in the meantime, playing hockey, traveling around America,
Do they make special allowances for you because you're like a jock, like in terms of academic stuff?
I kind of happily no.
Oh. Yeah. So you sputtered a little bit academically. Is that what you're saying?
No, I just, even if I hadn't been playing ice hockey, I was not prepared academically to be there, and I had to catch up. So, like,
were you able to catch up, though?
I did after 2 years, and then so I'm very proud of that, but I also, I realized that some kids are just trained from the day they're born to be there, and I'm so glad I wasn't.
So did you graduate?
I graduated, yeah.
You have a degree from Harvard.
Cum laude.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's funny.
And you went for hockey. Mm-hmm. That's an odd trajectory.
Yeah.
And so, there was forgive me if I'm mispronouncing her name, but there was an NHL player, was her name Manon Rhéaume?
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. She was a female goaltender in the NHL, right?
Briefly. She played a couple of games with the Tampa Bay Lightning.
And this was revolutionary and newsworthy. Was she someone that
I had a poster of her in my room. Yeah.
So she was definitely a hero.
Yeah.
Heroine. Yeah. So was it playing with men? I don't know where to go with this. Like I ask someone a question and then we just go in all sorts of directions. Yeah. And I want to find out the punk bands you saw in Guelph, so don't let me forget that, the ones in the basement here at the University Center. Mm-hmm. But this is just, I'm overwhelmed by all of this information, so let me try to unpack as much as I can. Playing with men as a woman, what was that like?
Well, in Guelph, my teammates were so wonderful to me. I never got picked on. The only tough thing was I was always changing in the janitor's room or the bathroom without a chair, and before and after, and you're all sweaty, that kind of thing. I miss some of the locker room hang, which is like part of the best part of hockey, maybe. So, but they were super kind. No parents. It was only once I was like 14 that I think the parents started thinking, maybe I was 16 when they sort of voted me off, like, as a girl. But before that...
What? Really?
Well, it was for a AAA tryout, and they brought me in, and they said, you're good enough, but at this point, you should probably go to Toronto and play women's hockey because it's kind of tense. I was cute. I was like 15, and all the boys, they were very serious hockey players and stuff like that. So I could be seen as a distraction or whatever.
You were cute.
Yeah, I think so.
You are cute. I don't want to make you uncomfortable, but the parents thought that you would be a distraction to the other kids.
The coaches and the parents, yeah. But it wasn't too bad though, because they spoke to me very respectfully, and I remember that meeting well because it was devastating on the one hand, but they also said, we believe in you, that you could try to make the women's national team and everything, but you have to move on from boys hockey now.
Wow.
And I was devastated, but I also felt very confident as an ice hockey player at that point. So I was like, okay. And then Nick, my father, had to drive me to Toronto 4 or 5 times a week, 3 or 5, to play with the women there.
Right. And how was that?
Wonderful. There were a bunch of I got to train with some Olympians and play with girls who had come from all over Ontario.
Did you play with people we would know, like famous people sort of?
Yeah. Lots of them. They're so good. I the first wave of women Olympians, Canadians and Americans, I played with or against them all at some point.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So who am I? Like Cassie Campbell?
Yeah. She was a senior arrow and I was a junior arrow.
Okay.
So, and her mother was my coach.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Eunice Campbell, and in college there were 8 Olympians on my team, including Jennifer Botterill, who's one of Canada's greatest players ever, and Angela Ruggiero, who's the best defenseman who ever lived. She's a U.S. player, was my roommate in college.
Oh, at Harvard.
Yeah,
oh, okay. Okay, so you played with the best.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned that you were cute. Were you a good...
Oh, my God.
No, I'm sorry. Were you a great goaltender? Were you, could you hang in there?
I was.
You were good, yeah.
I was great. I was the starting goalie for Harvard. But I should say I got injured and slowed down.
Oh, okay. What was the injury?
First I blew up my ACL. Then I broke my hip.
Playing you in a game?
Yeah. Well, the hip in practice. But
oh no.
So it meant that then my lateral movement, which is as a goalie is really important, was compromised. And I always knew I was I'm not as fast anymore. So. How
long were you in rehab for the hip? How long did it take to recover?
It took 10 years after.
10 years?
Yeah, because people say it's 1 year, but the truth, I could only walk for 4 or 5 miles without getting tired.
Oh.
And then, so now I can hike mountains and stuff like that.
Wow, that must have been heartbreaking.
That sounds like a slow recovery, but I like to emphasize the length because sometimes people say 6 months or a year for an injury, but in truth, for all the muscles and the balance to return, it's a long time before you're powerful again.
But you didn't take 10 years to go and play hockey again.
I had a hiatus when my hip was broken.
Yeah.
I came back for 1 year.
After a year? A year later?
Yeah.
Okay. So you started playing it and then you realized you weren't the same.
I'm not the same. No, but even after my ACL blew out, I didn't have the jump. I think I was... one of the fastest goalies before that, and then after I just knew it. You couldn't tell anyone either, but I knew that I was slower, and
no one pointed this out to you. You just knew.
I knew, but I also could tell that I didn't have this exact same confidence, which is really important for a goalie. But I did start for Harvard for 3 years, and we made 2 Frozen Fours.
That's the Final Four?
Yeah.
Sorry. I actually don't know much about the collegiate hockey, college hockey. I don't know much about it. I don't follow it.
Pretty serious business.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds like it. Yeah.
And then my last game ever was double overtime and losing to Minnesota at the national championships. Yeah, in Minnesota.
That's your final game.
My final game.
So you
off the post and in.
Oh. That's a drag.
Yeah.
That's a hair, a hair away from no goal.
Yeah.
Do you follow hockey still?
Yeah.
Do you follow the NHL or college hockey?
I've been following just the last couple of months, though. It was the Women's World Championship, so I was paying attention to that a lot. But when I was living in New York the last few years, I had so many friends obsessed with basketball and stuff like that I kind of fell off on following hockey. But I'm moving to Montreal, and I plan on...
Oh, you're moving to Montreal?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna. Okay, so we unpacked some things, but let's keep going. There's a lot here. But I want to ask you about the fact that I've tried to pin you down for this interview a few times.
Yeah.
Because I know you as being someone who has lived in Guelph, And I thought this would be relatively simple. But the one time I contacted you, well, I knew you were living in Brooklyn. But then I think when we were corresponding, you were in Spain. You've been kind of all over the place.
That's true.
So where are you living? You're living in Brooklyn.
Right now, no, I don't live anywhere.
You don't live anywhere right now. But how long were you in Spain?
For 2 months.
2 months, okay.
Because my partner, Georgia, she grew up in Spain.
Right.
And we're going to get married, so
Congratulations.
very soon. And so I wanted to see where she grew up. Because I could also tell that her heart, she likes, when she's speaking Spanish, she's perhaps, more alive and all these things. And I've never, done that with her. So we had to go, and it was really nice there.
Do you have some Spanish?
Oh, no, just very basic.
Very basic. My son and I downloaded an app, and we were trying to learn Spanish together over Christmas because we were bored.
That's lovely.
Yeah, it fell off.
Which app?
It's called Duolingo.
Yeah, I'm on that too.
It's pretty good.
The Spanish, it's like they don't have the Spanish accent on that. It's mostly sort of like, like
it's a robot.
Yeah.
It's like a robot automated voice, and it can't get all the accents.
So no one knew what I was saying, because if you don't have the little, the air
inflection,
moving in the right way.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you're trying to get some Spanish going.
Yeah.
Okay, so you were just in Spain visiting, so that's what it was.
Yeah.
And but you've been living in New York?
Yeah. Over the last 5 years, back and forth from Guelph to New York, and I have a house in Guelph, and I consider it home, but...
Oh, you own a house here?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And I always... though I would have all these jobs I was doing in New York, so I had an apartment there and did a lot of work there and had adventures.
What kind of jobs?
Research or editing and writing. But I ended up being an editor at one publishing house and then being an assistant editor to a bunch of other ones. That was just to make money to be there, really. Right,
okay. And so at your book launch for Shot Blue, in Guelph recently during Kazoo Fest, you made a very heartfelt speech about how you missed Guelph and how much Guelph meant to you.
That's true.
And I kept thinking, you were living in Brooklyn, New York, New York City, one of the most exciting places in the world. I would think you'd have enough to do. You'd have enough to think about. You'd have enough action.
That's the thing.
That you wouldn't be homesick.
Too much action.
Too much?
Yeah.
It was overwhelming.
At some point, I was going out, say, every night of the week and having adventures and meeting heroes, dining with them, going to 3 art galleries, running into somebody else, going to an underground bar, seeing somebody play music 2 feet away, a hero, and then this would happen night after night, and I realized didn't even tell my sister or my mother my stories anymore, where it used to be that I'd have 1 or 2 stories a week to share with everyone. Yeah. And now I was inundated with experiences, and it was wonderful. And I'm not criticizing it, but it was way too much for me because I like to...
Because you couldn't share it.
Yeah, I couldn't share it, and I also couldn't really roll it around in my head or at some point really feel through everything because it was so busy. Yeah. And then sometimes in New York, I tried to live a quieter life, but it really, it calls to you. And there's a lot of people living under pressure there, too. And I felt that all the time.
Yeah. Financial pressure, just the pressure of people. Just
class, race,
yeah.
All that stuff. Yeah. And in the end, I was always chasing a cheap apartment, of course, to try to live. And I would move from neighborhood. I lived in Harlem. I lived in Greenpoint, then Bed-Stuy, which is a traditionally black neighborhood. Yeah. And I was aware that I was, the person who I couldn't afford any more than that, but I also was paying a little bit more than the people who had always lived there. Yeah, yeah. And it's not, I thought I have a place to live. I don't need to do this.
Take up room even in New York?
Yeah. Yeah. And my friends are also busy. I was so busy that it's hard to hang out with people.
Right.
Even new friends who I loved and I'm so excited about, we would make plans, see you in 2 weeks. And I like seeing people every day or running into them.
So you have there's a social familial impulse within you.
Yeah.
And when I see where you're coming from. It just, you felt a little isolated. I mean, it sounds like you had friends. By the way, some of the heroes, I'm just curious.
Yeah, sure.
Who you saw, what they meant to you. It sounds like that resonated with you, the experience, but you had no one to share it with. Please share. I'd like to hear about it.
Well, I had people to share it with. It was just sort of like full on. It was like being on a ride or something like that you couldn't get off.
Yeah.
But, my writers that I met that I loved, Yoko Tawada, who's a Japanese writer, Jenny Erpenbeck, who's one of my biggest heroes. She's a German writer. She wrote a book called Visitation and another called The End of Days, which are my favorite contemporary books.
Right.
And suddenly, one night, I met her and then was riding a train with her. And I don't think the next day, that's the kind of thing I would just love to call my sister about, But I had to get up and go the next day on the subway somewhere else and participate in another thing.
Right.
I used to work at a place where Ann Carson's always dropping by. Laszlo Krasznahorkai, the great Hungarian writer. I've had many chats with him, and it's totally thrilling. All my heroes, really.
So mostly these are primarily all literary heroes.
Yeah.
And you would see them, and you would speak with them, and
hang out with them, drink with them.
Did you pick their brains about their process?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you want to kind of play it cool when you're around someone like that, I assume. Mm-hmm. Not dig too deep.
Depends who it is. Some people are very generous.
Yeah.
Like Jenny Erpenbeck, she loved to speak generously about her work. Ann Carson's tough. She's got her leather jacket on, and she'll mostly respond like in a way that would tease like the younger people around, and that's legitimate. She's very busy with.
There are some writers, like Margaret Atwood, who say, you just the way to write is to write. That's it. Like the solution seems simple to them.
Yeah, I agree.
You agree?
Yeah.
It's not. There's no mystery to it. You just have to sit down and do it. I think sometimes people are wary of the work. You know what I mean?
That's true, yeah.
They're just like, I don't know where to begin, because I think they know it's a daunting task. And so they don't know where to begin. It's like a messy room, like a room that's impossibly messy. You just don't know where to begin. I feel like that's what some writers go through, or aspiring writers go to. But you didn't have that block. You just you exude a certain confidence, I can tell. Like
I just love to write.
Yeah.
But I will say, even if I have... The last thing I wrote was just an article actually about hockey, but I know that feeling before I sit down or as I'm having my breakfast. I get a little nervous and excited, and it's like jumping into the cold water. Or I'm ready to. I know
you have an idea.
Yeah, and I'm gonna do it. But yeah, I also like that. It's kind of like going into the void. I find it's really adventurous to write.
Yeah, on a much lesser level than you, I have the same. I'll be doing the dishes, and I immediately have to stop because something I've been thinking about finally struck me, so I have to go write it down.
Yeah.
And then I think I'm just going to go write down the idea, but then I just end up writing the piece if I have a piece to write or something. Do you have that?
Yeah, then that's really beautiful and extremely fun.
Yeah. Where you've got
That's
something
like.
And then you go for it. Yeah. So this trajectory of being a really excellent hockey player to being a writer of fiction and editor of a literary editor, I mean, that's not, and going to Harvard from Guelph, none of this makes any real sense. You are an interesting person. There's no doubt about it. But Guelph, in your little dedication to Guelph, you spoke very lovingly of some of the people here and the city itself and your family. What has this small town done to shape you into this very unique person, if I might say?
I think that Guelph taught me that I could make anything. And it was really, the first time I realized I could make something was my sister took me to a Jim Guthrie show at the Trashateria, where he had his loop pedals.
Oh, it was like a solo show?
Yeah, very early.
With the Nintendo, the PlayStation? Was it that one?
No.
It was a loop pedal? Oh,
just
sorry.
loop pedals. And I think I was 12, so...
Oh, wow.
It was really early, Jim Guthrie.
Okay.
And he had made a tape, and I listened to it over and over and over again. And I always was interested in listening pretty much exclusively to the things my friends were making after that.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't believe they'd done it, and I didn't dare to dream I would when I was 12. But once I was about 15, 16, and Noah started making rap albums.
Noah 23.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I'd be in... What was that restaurant downtown where he used to work?
Aquarius?
Yeah.
Cafe Aquarius.
I'd be in there and everyone's playing songs that they'd made.
Yeah.
And I wanted to do that, but it was because I knew them that I thought that I could. So
right.
My mom got me a 4-track And I made lots of records in my basement, which I then very happily destroyed because they were so bad.
So you were interested in music as well?
Yeah.
And making music?
Yeah. That's how it started, was with all these songwriters. And I just, by seeing that and knowing they could make album after album, which they did, and especially Noah, he's so inspiring.
Yeah.
Through his productivity, I just thought I can do that too. It's very simple. And there was even the expectation that you should. Livestock, the rapper Ben, was my best friend when I was 12 and 13.
Yeah.
And he's a very productive writer as well.
Yeah.
And I especially because I was a girl and those guys are so sweet and lovely, I think they put pressure on me to produce things.
Right.
So I thought, okay, I have to make things too.
So your entry point into literary writing was songwriting.
Yeah.
And so you began as a songwriter?
I did, but those things that I wrote, I didn't perform them.
Right.
You know.
But you eventually had a project called Cocoa Blue.
Yeah, with Evan Gordon.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you would make records. You started to make records.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see that even by the way your eyes are shining thinking about it, this was that was a big deal for you.
Yeah.
To actually make a record and produce music.
That was always my dream, but I did put a lot of emphasis on the lyrical writing, so it was also, and I pushed myself with the poetry of it, and so I think I taught myself how to write in different forms that way, because they're like, my songs are generally have a certain structure, and so I was teaching myself poetry too, but through music, which I knew I could do because all my friends were doing it.
When you say your songs had a certain structure, do you mean as sort of the opposite of a conventional verse, chorus, verse, bridge musical structure?
No,
or
they often had that, but I would try to make poetic developments, verse to verse, and as all songwriters who I admire do.
Right.
But I was giving myself a bit of an education in writing through doing that, and even picking apart my friends' songs and other songs that I love and see how they're built. And
you mentioned Noah 23, you mentioned Livestock, you also mentioned Jim. When I heard the Cocoa Blue record, it seemed to lean more towards Jim. Did you get into rapping? Were you ever a rapper?
I rapped a little bit.
You did?
Yeah, I couldn't help it because Ben, Livestock, was my best friend when I was a young teenager.
Did you have an MC moniker?
Coco Bonaparte.
Coco Bonaparte, that's right.
That's me.
I totally blanked on that. That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, so you would rap. What was that like? Because that is not only poetic writing, that's a performance thing. That's a skill set you have to develop. How was that?
It was good. It felt really good. I love practicing with my friends and the DJs who are always my favorite, and dancing. I mean, that's a life. And
yeah.
I just glanced it. I couldn't help it because those were my friends, but it's extremely fun and it feels really good.
What's with the Coco?
Oh, well, my goddaughter, Coco Summer Rainbow, is her name.
Her name is Coco Summer Rainbow?
Yeah.
Wow.
And so when she was born, people started calling her Rainbow, and I was like, Coco's such a cool name, K-O-K-O.
Yeah.
And Coco, she's a friend from up north in Temagami.
Okay.
Her parents. And Coco Miss means grandmother in Anishinaabe, I think. And
okay.
So, but this child I loved. And my other friend, now he's 18 and he's 6'3", but my godson, her older brother, is Sam Blue Sky.
Oh,
so it was like Coco Blue is a mix of their names, which is my band with Evan.
That's your band. Does that band still exist?
I think it might.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You might do it again.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love that band so much.
You released one record, right? Was it an EP? Or no, it was a full-length record. Yeah. It's a CD. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So this shot blue, Cocoa Blue. What's going on with the blue?
Yeah, blue is the color of poetry.
Is that right?
Yeah.
How so?
That's it's a long-standing symbol. So I play out. It's one of my favorite poets, Jory Graham, who was my teacher too. She says in one poem, she says, there's in the blue light, I'll take you there. So it's sort of like the light. Poetry maybe shines blue light on things which show them slightly differently and maybe more clearly.
I didn't know this.
Just this, I think it's a very old symbol. We could look it up in the book of symbols, but yeah.
You're into symbols?
Yeah.
What about like astrology? Are you into astrology?
A little bit.
Noah is, I think, very into astrology.
Yeah,
and
very much.
I sometimes I'm baffled at how much he knows about it. Actually, I'm like, oh, seems to put a lot of stock into that stuff. Are you?
Yeah, I believe in all of that stuff.
You do?
Yeah.
Do you think things happen for some reason per se? Like, are you someone who thinks fate plays a hand in everything, that kind of thing?
Sometimes, but mostly I just am in the like trying to be in the moment. I think like fate implies an arc or a future that you might jam into, but
Right.
I'm just focused on the present as sort of like a humming present, which I think that's all I think there really is that I know anyway.
There's a moment, I want to talk about Shot Blue as much as we can without ruining the book for anyone who's about to read it, because it's a very compelling book. And I believe, if I recall correctly, this phrase, Shot Blue, is first invoked in a passage about this character Marie, right?
Yeah, that's right.
What is that? Can you describe that passage? What does Shot Blue mean exactly?
It's Marie is a young girl who spends most of her time either with her mother, with whom she feels alone, or alone, and she's sitting writing in her diary, which she does very sparsely.
Mm-hmm.
And she hears a gunshot down the bay. She's on an island, on a deep lake.
Yeah,
and
in the north.
In the north,
yeah.
And this is something that I've heard dozens of times out in my boat or in the canoe. Just hear a gunshot and you think you're alone, and also there are no other boats around, and you realize there are, men or women on land somewhere.
Uh-huh.
But for her, it's very abstract. So she hears the shot, and she's been struggling to describe the sky, and she's looking. It's a blue sky, and she hears the shot,
right? And
she just thinks that this is the perfect language to describe it. Now, shot blue. That's what it is.
Okay.
And I think it's because the gunshot too sort of like blows open the language and the sky for her.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, that I appreciate your. I mean, obviously you would have greater insight on this. That I was trying to come up with my own interpretation of it, because I believe one of the other characters, Tristan, does he not then adopt the moniker Shot Blue? Does he become Tristan Shot Blue or something? I read that somewhere.
But I like that.
I keep reading.
Yeah.
I read a review of it and it mentioned that, and I was like, I don't remember that happening.
No, that doesn't happen. But the kind of that feeling of being alone and a young person who's having epiphanies is something that Marie and Tristan share.
Marie loves Tristan.
Yeah.
Tristan does not know this.
No.
Or acknowledge it.
No, not at all.
Okay. This book when I read it, I enter a weird dreamlike state. I can't figure out when this book is happening or exactly where it's happening.
Yeah, I love that. That's really intentional.
That's intentional
yeah.
for you. It's of no time and place. Although I will say, in my mind, I picture some post-apocalyptic time, because the characters seem to be they are at the mercy of nature and the elements a lot of the time.
Yeah.
What is going on in this book? What inspired this book exactly?
I really love what you're saying. Well, I think that I feel. I should say too, it's been criticized the idea that there can be like some confusion in the narrative perspective in the book.
Yeah.
But that's all very much. I wanted it to be something where the characters and how I feel is that when you spend time with someone, your consciousnesses, they overlap, and you feel things together and very much apart at the same time.
Yeah.
And so there's a bit of a swish and a blur in a lot of the moments where you don't know if the feeling is being shared or who it belongs to.
Yeah.
And that
it's blurry.
I love that. That's exactly what I was trying to do, because that's how I've felt my whole life in my close friendships.
You felt like what? Because
we have a lot to do with each other more than we.
You're a gang person though. Yeah. You're a person that thrives in sort of collective environments.
That's true.
And I think what you're saying is that when you're in those environments, you feel like the unit is one.
Yeah.
One entity.
Yeah.
You're not separate people. You're like Voltron. You're coming together and you're one giant thing. Did you get the Voltron reference?
No.
It's a cartoon. It was a cartoon when I was a kid, and no one seems to get this reference anymore past below 25 or something. But anyway, yeah, it's stupid. I think it was it might have been a Japanese toy that they turned into a cartoon, but basically the arms and the legs and the head or whatever were all their own robots. But when they had to deal with something, you know, like if they wanted to play net, they would come together and form a giant robot. Not they'd be the individuals, but they'd form a collective.
Yeah.
On some level, I think as a kid, I probably thought, that's teamwork. I bet they were kind of secretly teaching you how teamwork worked. You know, you have to work together. But in any case, enough about Voltron. I don't know what we were talking about. Oh, this notion of space and time blurring together for a shared experience.
Yeah.
And you think people were criticizing this because they like definitive characterizations and definitive characters, frankly.
Yeah.
But people maybe aren't ready for this in terms of a book. Is that what?
Well, I think that a lot of people, when I say that, that's just a couple critics who I think are over-intellectualizing it, maybe. Because all the readers I've talked to, people really like that. Like, I've had people respond really positively to that. But I should say that while I'm interested in that blurring together and the shared experience, the book is very much about where that kind of goes wrong, where you thought you were sharing something with someone. And, like, the flip side of it is that actually sometimes you do something together, but you have very different experiences of it, and maybe not in the most friendly way, and you can feel very isolated when you're with somebody too. So the book is very much about like how close people are, where they overlap, how much they love each other and blend together, but also are very much alone at the same time. So all these dynamics that are shifting. There's no moral to the story. It's about like these shifting daily dynamics. Well,
but those shifts and that uncertainty, I think, are a hallmark of contemporary postmodern fiction and pop culture. There's this sense that there are no defined happy endings anymore. More and more, I know this might seem maybe like a trite example, but when I think of how much of an uproar something like the finale of The Sopranos caused, and what a chain reaction that I saw in film and movies, or like Game of Thrones. I'm using TV shows and movies, of course, because they come to me ready. I don't know why. They're vivid. But this notion of like every character you love dies or doesn't have a happy ending. And we are more and more, I think, as the earth feels uncertain, I feel like writers are picking up on that notion of like, it's okay to confront uncertainty. It's actually healthy for us to engage with this notion that things are not always going to work out the way you think they are. Right. That intuition is maybe a false flag even. Like that kind of intuitive sense, like I'm going to go into a movie theater or I'm going to read a book and at the end I'm going to feel good. Yeah. And there's some aspect of that in this book of characters sort of leaving. Characters that you've just become engaged with suddenly disappearing. Yeah. That's something you're tapping into, I think, this notion of... Yeah, I was really interested in that when I was writing it. Now it's funny because I have different personal interests, but when I was writing it, I was really personally going through a lot and wondering about like the loss of friends for whatever reason, and people in your life, family members who pass away, and just what it's like to meet, to be with people, and then to have there be some sort of barrier where you no longer can see them anymore. So people being cut off from each other through discord or death, or the just relationships ending. Yeah, and I was really tender about it in my own life. I was worried about it, and I love my friends and family so much, and it was something I was just turning over a lot. And now I have different preoccupations, but at the time I was really thinking and feeling a lot about that. Well, there's also an aspect in your book about usage of people using one another for their own ends, using the land for their own ends. Yeah. What were you trying to say there? Yeah. Well, with the land, and I mean, it's
It's the worst story, Canada's worst story. And in this case, it's just a family who has bought an island, which of course never belonged to them in the first place.
Right.
But that through poverty, they can't hold on to it. And this is Tristan's island, which his mother had. And it was his grandfather's at one point.
Treble Island?
No, that's a different.
Oh, that's where they go. Yeah,
Yeah,
sorry. I'm sorry.
okay.
I'm messing up your.
No.
I'm just trying to follow along. But where? So wait, Treble Island is the island.
It's the big main island.
The big island, but the island that they were on.
It's a small one.
But does it have a name?
No.
Okay, good. Sorry.
Yeah.
This is what happens though. Like
Yeah.
when you're dealing with a nebulous universe like the one you created. Where, like I said, I don't know where things. I know that one place is called Treble Island, so I jumped in stupidly. You continue.
That's okay.
You were speaking so well and eloquently, and I'm just
that's
an
okay.
oaf trying to stay engaged here. But go ahead.
What was I talking about?
See, I don't know. I screwed it all up.
Moving on.
No, you were talking about land and Canada's
right.
history of land and how Tristan and his mother thought they owned an island, but they really didn't.
They really didn't.
Yeah.
And then it's taken over by Americans who, strip the trees and build up a huge fortress there for their own leisure.
Yeah, recreational lodge kind of thing. Yeah.
And it destroys all the aspects of the island that he loves, although he's still trying to always pull them out. And so he stays up very late once all the lights are out, because that's how it always used to be.
Right. There
it was very dark and stuff like that.
So, but you can see where I know you were trying to strike back at critics who maybe don't, or maybe are too fixated on this notion of solid ground or grounding in something. But you can see where people would be like I say, I thought something had happened to the planet, and that a bunch of people were just dealing with what they had.
Yeah.
They, in lieu of creature comforts like a mirror, you're knocking a mirror aside, like a side view mirror off a car, and you're carrying this jagged shard of glass with you because you just want to look at yourself every once in a while or whatever.
There is a lot of allegory in the book, I think, and very intentionally. And there are also sort of puzzles, and some of my favorite literature is like absurdist modern literature, and so a lot of that is puzzles or philosophical conundrums, and those things, they just came out because I wrote the book much like a meditation, but there is an allegory, and I could see it could be post-apocalyptic. I mean, for Rachel it is, because she's done with society, and that's where the book starts. And that she's leaving society,
right?
And she could be, and she walks away from it, and that's, and it could sort of like everything's burning behind her. Yeah.
But then you have this company that builds a rec lodge.
Yeah.
And it's seemingly in the midst of all this chaos, where people are just struggling to survive.
Because they have money. They're a different class.
So it's an allegory about class.
There is that.
Yeah.
Because It happens in a lot of beautiful places where people live year round, and then others come to tourist there for the summertime. And there's a whole thing with Americans up in the north, in northern Canada too, where they come and they spread out.
Like cottages, cabins. They come up here. I hear about this.
And so do people just from
Southern Ontario. Yeah. They head up for a respite from the city.
Right, but some people live there, and yeah.
So there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
Your father, Nick, has been on the show, Nicholas Ruddock, and he's also a writer. Of the works of his that I've read, they strike a much different tone in some ways than yours. What kind of insights or inspiration does he provide you as a writer?
Well, I could tell this story. He is a great inspiration to me as a prose stylist and a storyteller, but we're very, very different writers. He, early on, I didn't anticipate this question, but it's important because I love my dad so much and I admire him.
Has no one asked you about your father?
No.
I feel like your father he gets short shrift in the literary world here. I mean, he's been nominated for some awards, big awards.
Yeah.
But I find it difficult when I talk about your dad's, and I mean, he had, what, did he have an agent and stuff?
Yeah, he's a great writer.
He's a great writer, and he's got a publisher, big publishers, not small publishers, you know what I mean? He's got both. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's a tough gig.
Yeah, but he's been published lately in Brick magazine a couple times, which is my favorite Canadian magazine, and
great journal. Yeah,
he was up for the EFG Short Story Award in England, which is huge.
Yeah.
And he writes these really magical, intricate prose pieces.
Yeah, they're wonderful.
Yeah.
A wonderful writer, yeah. And also in Guelph. And he came to it really late in life. Like, he's a doctor.
Yeah.
And he came to writing kind of late in life, he told me. Yeah.
That's right. We started this thing when I was at Harvard and very behind.
I remember you would exchange. Yeah. Sorry, continue.
So many of my friends, I remember I had a class called expository writing, which I had actually tested out of, where I needed even remedial writing lessons at Harvard.
Really?
Yeah, but I went to them and I said how much I loved writing and that I wanted to be in this one poetry sort of study class, and they let me in. And the first day we were supposed to go put our essays into a folder in the library, and I opened up the folder and I read a couple of my classmates' pieces, which were beautiful. I actually still remember their structures, and I realized that these people were writing at age 18 very beautifully. And I basically had a panic attack because I couldn't write like that at all. Right. And I called my parents and I was like crying on the phone being like, I want to write. I always, I was writing my songs and things like this, and I conceived of myself like I had to write. But I realized that I didn't have the skills. And so part of this, my sister was at college at Queen's, and my dad took it upon himself to start to teach us how to use punctuation in the most creative and anomalous ways possible.
Okay.
So he didn't just teach me commas. He wasn't like, oh, you don't know how to use commas, like this is how they work in these plain ways. He started right at the top, and he wasn't a writer yet, but he would pull out Sebald sentences or Virginia Woolf and stuff like that and send them to us and say, look at this is how you do it.
Yeah.
And then he started writing his own to illustrate points where he didn't find the sentence in another book.
Right.
And he wrote such fucking beautiful sentences that my sister and I said, these are poems, like what you're doing are poems. And so he was teaching us how to write, and at the same time just started writing poetry for us.
Right. And were you not exchanging poetry?
Yeah, well, somewhat. He would send us something, and then this is very dorky, but it was also fun and natural.
I think it's gorgeous and beautiful that you have this familial bond over writing. It's amazing, yeah.
It was very natural, and I think at this point maybe I was 20 years old, and my sister was far away, and it was a way for us all to talk to each other too. Right. So he would send a sentence, and then we would respond, and what we loved about it, and that we didn't think this worked, and this and that and the other thing. So that we called that the Sentence of the Week Club, and, and that was the beginning of many books. You know?
Yeah. It just got him going.
Yeah.
It's an amazing story in itself, and your family is it's almost you guys could be like the subject of like a Wes Anderson movie at this point. There's a lot going on. The goaltending Harvard graduate and the writers and the what is your sister Nora you're referring to?
Yeah.
What does she do? She
writes poetry too. Right. And she works at Broadview Press, which is in town. Yeah.
My wife used to work there.
Oh, really?
Well, the company got kind of split up, and so she went with the. Anyway, that's not that interesting story, but yeah. So that's an academic book publisher.
That's right.
Right. So she's in books as well.
She is, yeah.
Okay.
She's a wonderful writer, and we all have totally different styles, which I like.
And your mom's a visual artist?
She's a painter. Yeah. My mom's really the leader of the family and the best artist in the family too. She's
Cheryl Ruddock.
Yeah.
We should point out Cheryl. I should have Cheryl on this show.
Oh yeah.
She's always very sweet and kind to me anytime I see her.
Yeah, and you should visit her studio.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, let's make that happen. I want all the Ruddocks on the show.
That's really nice.
I think it would be fun to have all of them on. So we've given people at least a cursory sense of Shot Blue, in that it's a lot to process. I hope you're not. If you object to anything I'm about to say or I'm saying, tell me.
I do object to that, in that I think it's mostly like a novel about these relationships, and it starts out with a mother and son, and it's very emotional. And a lot of people have written to me and been like, I read it in two nights, I couldn't put it down. And I think they follow the emotional strain of what the characters are going through, and they want to follow their sort of unusual decisions and turns. And then other people are puzzling over my poetry and my sort of like modern approach of making it really mysterious on purpose.
Right.
And other people are getting really tied up into that. So I almost think it appears to me, I have no idea though, really, but
I mean, you're responding to people talking to you, but there's also been like the New York Times published a review, the Toronto Star published a review. You've had some reviews.
Yeah.
And that's a weird thing. I guess I've been reviewed. It's odd, right? You put all your work and your heart into a thing and you think you know what it is, and then someone objective looks at it and they say, "Bah," or whatever, or "This is great," and you're like, "Oh, they saw something great about it or not great about it that I didn't even contemplate," right?
I think all the reviews have been really good, actually. The only thing that made me think like, was the Toronto Star headline, which as a writer and an editor, I think the editor tacked that up. They put this like shitty headline on what I think was a super
Clickbait.
respectful and quite thoughtful review for the Star, especially like someone had really tangled with the book, and I loved the review, but I saw the title of it and I thought, oh my god, like, thanks.
Well, the title.
I thought you put that up. I don't know if that's clickbait. I was like, who would want to click on that? But other than that, I've actually had dozens and dozens of reviews that, if they have criticisms, they're often about things that I was experimenting with, which I find super exciting.
The Toronto Star headline was something to the effect of the prose or the plot was sacrificed for the sake of poetry, or prose, in fact, actually. It was like they seemed to suggest the wordplay was of paramount importance to you as opposed to the plot development. And that's not. I see where you're. I mean, there's a point as you're reading it where you don't. Like I say, I think you'd have to admit it's a little bit of a shaky ground. Like, it's just sort of, as you say, it's not a conventionally written book.
Yeah.
And it doesn't develop.
Thank God, that's all I want to do.
That's right.
That's the whole point.
Well, who wants conventional, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I think you could I understand your objection to it. I'm not saying I agree with it, but I do think that I find myself, when I'm reading the book, I find myself sort of grappling with where I am at all the time, which is fine. It's a good feeling. I'm a nighttime reader. I tend to read before bed. Mm-hmm. So this book keeps me up.
Yeah.
It has kept me up, I should say. It's kept me up at night, and I can't stop reading it. And I'm also scared to fall asleep because I'm like, is this the world that could be? Is this the world that is? You know, it's because it seems to be temporally even all over the place. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I love it. It's great, and I
don't need any reassurance, but
because you're so confident.
No, because it's like a work of love, so that just exists like that, you know.
Yeah.
But it really is like, it has its own life apart from me, and I'm very happy with it. And I think that I will only probably write something more experimental, you know.
Next.
Yeah, and I really think that if you don't get criticized, that's like that would be terrifying. Because
it's nice to be divisive, or it's nice to be.
Well, if you're not, it's just like it's like you're pitching soft, you know.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Okay.
Which I was not taught to do in Guelph. My God, if you don't make something new, like, you don't have a place at the table here.
Your friends thought you were too good to go to Harvard, basically. On some level, you're from Guelph.
You can't go there.
You can't go to Harvard, but you went.
They're still disappointed in me, but I went and I survived, I think. Yeah.
They're disappointed in you? Do you think they were worried that you were going to forget them? Because that's the big leagues?
I think they didn't want me to become conventional in any
You haven't. Not at all.
That's cool.
There's nothing conventional. I would say you are among the most unconventional guests I've ever had on the show. The more we got into it,
that's nice.
You know, because I have Guelph people on all the time, and no one has had a story like yours. So I want to know what you mentioned, that if you make something else, it's going to be more experimental. Are you working on something?
Yeah, my next book, but it's a bit secret even to myself.
You're keeping secrets from yourself now, Jessie?
Yeah.
Okay, that's odd. That's weird.
Well, I like, when I write, I don't want it to be too mapped out, and I want it to be a meditation where I'm discovering things as I go along.
Sure.
Yeah.
You have a rough... When you began Shot Blue, did you have... and I don't want to be a person that asks you necessarily about your process, but did you have the characters in mind before the scenarios?
No. I think I realized only after I finished that my unconscious did, that there are certain people, that these characters were people that I loved, aspects of them, and that were really important to me archetypically, like the single mother with the young son, and just people in my life who I want to understand, and through writing I can understand, although they don't relate to anyone that I know specifically. It's like problems or people who I've known or wondered about.
Yeah.
And so that's where they came from.
Okay.
But with the next one, I will create some structure, but then I also want to write my way like into the into its like light and darkness, whatever it is.
Is there a name for this process? It's not like what is it called? It's not unconscious writing.
It's
what is
automatic
automatic writing. That's what it is.
Yeah. And I think I do that partly.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's very fun to just do pure automatic writing, and I used to do books of it, just fill books with it. But with this, I kind of circle around it. It's pretty stream of consciousness, but then I circle back around. So that's not pure automatic.
Okay,
right?
okay.
Yeah.
And you're going to move to Montreal?
Yeah.
Why?
Because my partner and I, we were working these jobs in New York, and we needed an escape plan. So we applied to Concordia. We both got it. So we're going as a family.
To go to school?
Yeah.
Oh, for more school.
Well,
Harvard wasn't good enough for you. You need to go to Concordia too.
I need to if I would like to teach to make some money.
Oh, I see.
Because I'd like to have a family that I could support. When it's just me, I like to be scrappy and to make piecework and everything like that. But now I'm settling down. So to support my family, I would like to get my PhD.
What do you have right now? A master's?
A master's,
you have did you get the master's at Harvard?
Toronto.
Oh, so you went to Harvard for your undergrad.
Yeah.
U of T for master's in English?
English, yeah.
Okay. I have a master's in English.
Wonderful.
I've accomplished nothing. Nothing. You are amazing. Anyway,
you've accomplished.
Nah,
oh my God.
Nothing. I don't want to make this about me now. We're wrapping up. It's fine. I'll be fine. But you're an inspiring person, Jessie. I appreciate you being on the show.
That's nice.
Is there why don't we go out on a Cocoa Blue song?
Oh, okay.
Is that a thing we could do? Or do you feel?
Were you at the Did you see the Magic?
Yeah, they did a song of yours.
Yeah, that was crazy.
It was amazing. Did you know they were going to do that?
No.
I was trying
That's typical. I was
trying
Jordy and Evan.
Yeah, that was very sweet. The Magic played this beautiful afternoon show at Kazoo Fest, and then it was at your book launch after you'd read and took some questions from the audience, and then they played one of your songs, and it was lovely. And I actually was so distracted by you. I was trying to gauge your reaction.
I was crying very hard.
I know. I was more interested in, and to be honest, I wasn't fixated on look at the crying person, but I was just like, she must be. That to me was more interesting almost than what was happening on stage.
Yeah.
I thought you had been surprised by this thing. Anyway, did you want to go to that song, or is there something else?
We could just go to more of a rock song. That song's very sad.
Okay.
And I cried enough about it this weekend when they played it.
Right. Okay.
You could play Saltwater.
Sure.
That's a water song.
Why?
It's kind of a nice rock song.
Okay. You just want to rock? You want to go out on a rocker?
Yeah, rock out.
Okay. All right. This is Saltwater from Cocoa Blue. What's the name of the record?
Thank you, Vish. Cocoa Blue, Crosses and Planks.
Crosses and Planks. And is it available in a Bandcamp or something?
Yeah. It's free because I put it after a while. I just put it up for free. So you can download it.
You can download the record.
Yeah.
And Crosses and Planks and Cocoa Blue on Bandcamp. Right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. This is Saltwater. Cocoa. See, now you got me calling you Coco.
That's what lots of people call me.
Yeah, I've never called you Coco.
Days of old.
Jessie, thank you so much for being on the show. Best of luck with everything.
Thank you, Vish. Yeah, very much.
You should have got married. You said it was too early, and now you want me to cry when you cry. You were so good looking, he caught you looking. Now nothing's easy on your eyes. It's salt water and you're thirsty, and salt water and your mouth's dry. It's salt water. You cry, cry, die. salt water when you're thirsty, and salt water when your mouth's dry. It's salt water. You cry, you cry, you die. Fast girl, hey fast girl, you'll never learn. And now you want me to cry when you cry. Well, who says better is what we deserve? I'm not gonna cry when you cry. It's salt water when you're thirsty, and salt water when your mouth's dry. It's salt water. You cry, you cry, you die. You cry, you cry, you die. Cry, cry, die.
From the 2013 release Crosses and Planks, that was Coco Blue, aka Jesse Ruddock, with a song called Saltwater. Jesse, thank you so much for being on the show. I can't recall having a guest on the show who surprised me so much with everything they said. Just everything Jesse said was somewhat astonishing to me, and I enjoy it. It's just like her book. It's kind of like Shot Blue. Every page I read, slightly surprised by what I'm encountering. She's a magical person. So, and if you don't know her, she's one to watch, I would say. Jesse Ruddock, super talented person. Thank you for being on the show. You just go find out more about Jesse Ruddock in her new book, Shot Blue. This is the 316th episode of the Creative Control with Vish Khanna podcast, and it's available on all the podcast platforms now. iTunes, Audio Boom, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, Overcast, pretty much everything. You can learn more about the show at vishkhanna.com. Oh, it's on YouTube too. I always forget to say that. It's on YouTube. I've been putting the episodes on YouTube. Not very many people are noticing this, but that's fine. I'm just putting them out there, and maybe someday someone will stumble upon these internet things we do and be like, what is this? Brr. Anyway, it's everywhere. Learn more about the show at vishkhanna.com. Also go to patreon.com/creative control to make a flexible monthly donation to keep the podcast going. Or just listen to the show for free on CFRU, which you can do anywhere in the world at cfru.ca, or on Wednesdays at noon Eastern Standard Time. That's when the show goes on the air, and you can tune in, as I say, cfru.ca or CFRU 93.3 FM if you're in the area. Please do that. This show would not be possible without our sponsors. Pizza Trocadero, amazing pizza in Guelph, 519-829-2444 for pickup or delivery, or visit trocaderoguelph.ca to learn more. The Bookshelf, a cultural hub that I'm sure Jessie partook of when she was in this town. It's a cultural hub, it's a bookstore, it's a music venue, it's a bar, it's a movie theater. Located at 41 Quebec Street in Guelph. Learn more about them at bookshelf.ca. And for the finest coffee anywhere in the world, really, try Planet Bean freshly roasted, fair trade certified organic coffee. Let me just say I've not been all over the world. That's fair to say, but I like this coffee. Of the coffee I've had in the world, this is my favorite coffee. So go to planetbeancoffee.com to figure out if you can order some of this amazing, amazing coffee. I don't know if you heard. Probably you've heard by now if you follow the show or follow the Facebook or the Twitter. There is a TV show version of Long Night with Vishkana. We recorded 6 episodes. They are now available and streaming, courtesy of the people at 5TV. If you're a Bell Media subscriber, you can access the show on your app or on your TV, and it's on your TV. It's on channel 1, on 5TV1, or on channel 1217 on 5. And it's available in those recommended folders and the 4K content folders. It's there. It's a little scrappy. We worked really hard, but it's scrappy. I like it. I'm happy with it. I've never done anything like this before. We're all very happy, and there's great guests on the show. So, yeah, there you go. I hope you will check out the show if you can, and if you can't access it, if you don't have a Bell thing right now, ideally the show will be available on YouTube and whatnot in the near future. So look out for that, Long Night with Vishkan. All right, that's it for me. I will talk to you very, very, very soon. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.